Hi, guys and gals. I am Mr. Yeti here talking about my credentials so you have some resource to know what I'm qualified for. I don't want to go into all of my certifications that I've received over the years. That would be a lot, as some of them are smaller and less important than others and more relevant to like things that I might have hosted in events, such as like the 21st Century Technology Conference and things like that. Or maybe you might have heard of something called the Gatekeeper certification for people who are out there keeping their eyes open for suicide prevention and things like that that are specially trained. But I wanted to talk more about the credentials that I have that make me distinctly qualified to help you and your students strategize about their learning and their literacy over time. First thing I wanted to address was as a businessman, I did actually go through and get an extra credential for my small business certificate. This was back in, I think I finally received this back in July, yeah, July 2019. And I was a part of this program for a little bit. This was not a college course, but it was a college continuing education course that was linked to their small business center. And there were a lot of advantages that came with getting a certification like that. Part of that was also to secure some extra funding, but also learn about how businesses work and how I can best come to you as a educator and advertise my skills. I'm still learning a little bit about marketing, but I'm hoping that that helps you understand that I'm always willing to learn and try and figure out new things. Second thing that separates me is my Associates of Applied Science degree. This is something I received back in 2016. It's called the Foundations of Teacher Education program, but it was actually called the IA program or the Instructional Assistant program when I first started. It went through sort of a facelift to sell itself to other colleges that we had articulation agreements with, but nothing really substantial changed in the curriculum. It's just the name of the degree that changed. So we always kind of put a parentheses IA after it for those of us who graduated this program. It's one of two programs that I had the opportunity to try and look into seeing an interest in. And this one was for K through 12 special education. It really should just be called the special education program or something like that. I think that makes a lot more sense. But they just decided to go with the foundations name to make it easier to sell to other colleges when you transfer your credits. Not that they really needed that because a lot of that is articulated anyway, which means that there's usually an agreement on how credits are transferred beforehand. The other program was the Associates. I don't think it's Associates of Applied Science, but it's they have an associate's degree in early childhood, which you might be more familiar with. That's something that doesn't focus as much on special education, but there's a lot of overlap between the early childhood program and the special education instructional assistant program. Both of them play similar roles, but in very different contexts. The next credential I want to talk about is my technical diploma in office technology assistant. This is a bigger than a certificate program, so this was an additional graduation. I actually had to walk across the stage for this, or I had the opportunity, I should say, to walk across the stage for this versus going and just getting a certification on top of my degree. So this lets people know that I'm skilled in a lot of different types of technology, office management. There's a variety of um, suites training that you have to go through, like Microsoft Office and a few other types of technology. So this kind of makes me more valuable to know what's going on out there for you and your student. But do know that this is one of those things that I have used more as a substitute than I have in the traditional setting. So uh, the background there is just something I'm very proud of. The fact that I was able to provide still some educational services as a substitute teacher. In addition to just the education side, I was also able to facilitate some things for both the operations and office management of several sections of the school, including guidance counseling and stuff like that. The other one here is a general clerical assistant certificate. I'm not going to go too much in detail about this. Just know that this is more on organization of information, general clerical work. similar in concept to office management, but in this case, it's more about branding. It's more about interpersonal communication. I like this one because it kind of highlights that I'm more likely to be better equipped to work front offices and talk to people and stuff like that because it's a branding thing. You can the nice thing about the certification is that it allows you to sort of advertise that you've put together planning for your boss's trips or something, and you can host business meetings or business dinners and things like that. I think it's a really cool emphasis on uh, the inner workings and oral communication, and that's why I think it's valuable to point that out to you as a parent, because there's different types of language arts, and listening and speaking are two of the other critical parts of language arts out of the six categories that there are. So we often think of reading and writing, but sometimes we forget about the listening and the speaking part of it too. Um, the next one is my instructional strategy certificate, and this is the second to last one I'm going to show you. So be aware that the video is almost done. The instructional strategy certificate covers a large selection of courses dedicated to techniques for teaching, things like Common Core. So Common Core is the standards that the state adopted post No Child Left Behind as a sort of solution to mitigate the extra standards and testing that we do. So there's a lot of benchmarks and stuff like that. But also the techniques for teaching covers both advanced and introductory sides of things. So you become skilled in teaching the basics of literacy foundation, but also the advanced skills of that. And then on top of that, to throw in for good measure, we also throw in techniques for teaching science as well to help aid in that understanding and that literacy. But the other thing and the other component of Common Core is also that it's also math as well. Math literacy is part of that. So there's another techniques for teaching math on top of that. And there's other things that I could go into, but I think that you get the idea. Finally, the one that I'm often most proud to show is my certificate of inclusion. Received this one in 2015. This one was a a selection of courses where you have special education background, special education law, special education accommodations and modifications for lesson plans, things like that. But the idea of calling it inclusion, despite the fact that we focus on like 13 categories or cross categories, I should say, of disability, it also allows us to play the role of positive therapist to your student by putting the least restrictive environment on them, as well as trying to be as inclusive as possible so that they can feel fully welcome and participate. And it's sort of a philosophical certification on top of a legal certification. So it really does make us think about putting the learner first, right, and not focus on deficits and stuff like that. So we're not diagnosticians as teachers. We're not there to play the role of medical professional. We're there really to support them in who they are and how much potential that they have to be who they want to be in the future. So I think it's a really big shift in thought processes that some people might have forgotten was not that long ago, that we used to use words like retard and slow and things like that, where we took away the person and we just started to label them. And this helps us understand, at least this certification, this education helps us understand that it's much broader than that. It's much more complicated than that. We don't use IQ. We don't use certain measures to measure a person. So we try, again, the key word here is least restrictive. What is the least restrictive way for a person, whether they have disability or not, to develop as a learner and develop and operate in this world? And that's really what inclusion is versus just special education. And I think that's it. I think that's the last bit of credentials that give you a little bit of my specific education training. Um, and if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them if you reach out to me at edhelper.man, edhelper.man at gmail.com. And you'll be able to certainly get answers quicker. I'm pretty quick about getting back to people within the first 32 hours. So if you have any questions about my credentials, I'm always happy to answer them, and have a great day.